It started, as so many catastrophes do, not with a bang, but with the whisper-thin clink of porcelain on porcelain. The sound was sharp, brittle, and impossibly loud in the sun-drenched silence of the Palisades Grand Garden Room. "It's gone." The voice was not a shout. It was a low, venomous statement of fact, delivered by Beatrice DuPont, the 75-year-old reigning queen of the nursing home's resident hierarchy. Her diamond-laden hand, afflicted with a slight, aristocratic tremor, hovered over her empty velvet jewelry case. "It's gone." The room, a curated tableau of afternoon tea, cucumber sandwiches, and the polite, papery rustle of the very old and very wealthy, froze. The DuPont brooch. "It's gone." And then, her eyes, the color of chipped ice, swiveled and locked onto the only person in the room who did not belong. The man in the pale blue orderly scrubs, frozen by the doorway, a metal wastebasket in his hand. He was here. Beatrice's voice dropped, acquiring the hard, prosecutorial edge that had made her late husband a titan of industry. He was the only one. He was standing right there. He took it. All eyes turned to the man. 58 years old. His face a roadmap of lines. His shoulders stooped in a permanent, apologetic cringe. His name badge, clipped to his pocket, read, Arthur. Staff. Arthur. The facility manager, a nervous, sweating man named Henderson, sputtered. This is preposterous. Mrs. DuPont. Arthur has been with us for 20 years too long." Another woman from Beatrice's table chimed in. "He's a thief," Beatrice hissed, standing up, her small frame vibrating with a rage that seemed far too large for her. "I want security. I want the police. I want you to search him." Arthur just stood there, his head bowed, the wastebasket clutched in his left hand. He didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. He just accepted it. His face, pale and bloodless, was a mask of catastrophic, familiar shame. He looked like a man who had been waiting his entire life for this exact moment of ruin. From a corner table, near the wilting orchids, a new voice cut through the tension. It was cold, clear, and carried the effortless authority of a lifetime spent in command. "Don't say a word, Arthur." Evelyn Reed, 60 years old, her silver hair cut in a severe, expensive bob, placed her teacup down with a decisive click. She rose from the table where she had been sitting with her frail, terrified mother. "My name is Evelyn Reed," she said, walking into the center of the room. Her pantsuit was a blade of gray silk. "I am an attorney, and as of this second, I represent Mr. Arthur Sterling." She turned her sharp, assessing gaze from the horrified manager to the furious old woman. "Now, who wants to tell me what the hell is really going on here?" 2 weeks earlier, this confrontation would have been impossible. 2 weeks earlier, Evelyn Reed had been just another desperate daughter in the long, sad parade of the sandwich generation. She had stood at the imposing, mahogany and glass entrance of the Palisades, a place that insisted it was not a nursing home, but a luxury later-living community. It smelled not of sickness and despair, but of expensive lavender oil and industrial-strength floor polish. A string quartet played softly in the lobby. The cost was obscene, but the waiting list was 3 years long. Oh, Evie. Her mother, Margaret, 80 years old and light as a bird, had whispered, her hand clutching Evelyn's. It's so much. I don't belong here. You belong where you are safe, Mom," Evelyn said, her voice softer than she ever used in a courtroom. "After the last fall, we agreed. This is the best. This is the safest." But Evelyn knew it wasn't just the falls. Her mother was haunted. For 20 years, Margaret Reed, once the most competent and sharp-witted head nurse in Boston, had been dissolving. A pervasive, unnamed anxiety had eaten away at her, leaving her frail, perpetually startled, and plagued by nightmares. Doctors called it generalized anxiety. Evelyn called it a secret that had been slowly killing her. The first few days were a blur of forms and forced smiles. Evelyn, a predator by trade, assessed the ecosystem of the Palisades. She saw the cliques, the elites, Beatrice DuPont, and her table of wealthy widows who ran the residence council like a high school cafeteria. She saw the staff overworked, underpaid, and terrified of the residents. And she saw Arthur. He was different. He wasn't a nurse. He wasn't an orderly. He was something else. He was the man they called to do the jobs no one else wanted. He changed bedpans. He mopped spills. He was the one who sat with the dying in the 3 a.m. dark. He did it all with a meticulous, heartbreaking, almost obsessive-compulsive precision. Beatrice DuPont, the queen bee, treated him like furniture. "Arthur," she'd snap, not even looking at him. "This tea is tepid. Fix it." And Arthur, his head bowed, would just murmur, "Yes." But Evelyn, the lawyer, the observer, saw the details. When he was resetting a resident's spoon or adjusting a pillow, his hands were not the fumbling, rough hands of a simple orderly. They were impossibly steady. His fingers moved with an efficient, intelligent grace that was almost beautiful. They were the hands, she thought with a strange, cold jolt, of a surgeon. She also saw him with her mother. Margaret, who was terrified of everyone, was strangely calm around Arthur. He would bring her medication, and his very presence seemed to soothe her. "He's a good man, Evie," Margaret had whispered, clutching her blanket. He has sad eyes. Like he's lost something, too." "He's an employee, Mom," Evelyn had said. All business, but she had been curious. She did what she always did. She ran a background check. The name Arthur Sterling hit the database and exploded. It wasn't a record. It was a legend. A tragedy. Dr. Arthur Sterling, the boy genius of Boston General, the youngest chief of neurosurgery in the hospital's history. A pioneer. And then, the fall. 20 years ago. The DuPont case. A catastrophic, high-profile surgery. Charles DuPont, billionaire industrialist, on the table for a routine spinal procedure. He ended up in a permanent vegetative state. Died 6 months later. The subsequent lawsuit was the stuff of nightmares, whispers of negligence. Arthur Sterling, the genius, was accused of gross misconduct. The man who had been assisting him, the legendary doctor, Marcus Croft, had testified with great reluctance that Sterling had been reckless, that he had made a fatal, arrogant error. Arthur Sterling was ruined. His license was revoked. His family left. Until he reappeared, years later, as Arthur. An orderly, wiping tables in the very same nursing home where his victim's widow now reigned as queen. Evelyn had stared at the screen, a cold dread washing over her. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a powder keg, and now, with the accusation of a stolen brooch, Beatrice DuPont had just lit the fuse. "I represent him," Evelyn repeated, her voice pulling the solarium back into a stunned, taut silence. The manager, Henderson, blustered. "Miss Reed, this is an internal security matter." "You can't just—" "I just did," Evelyn said. "You have publicly accused this man, in front of a dozen witnesses, of felony theft. You are now, all of you, accessories to slander. If you take one more step, if you so much as ask him to turn out his pockets, I will file a civil suit that will tie this facility in knots for a decade. Do you understand me?" Henderson understood. He backed away, wringing his hands. Beatrice DuPont, however, was not so easily cowed. She was from a generation of women who built empires from behind dinner tables. She advanced on Evelyn. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice low. "You're defending him? This thief. I'm defending an employee." "You're bullying," Evelyn said, not giving an inch. "This is a setup, a pathetic, cruel prank." "Prank," Beatrice let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You think this is a prank? Her face, a mask of paper-thin wrinkles, suddenly crumpled, not in rage, but in a grief that was still raw after 20 years. Do you have any idea who that man is? Beatrice demanded, pointing a shaking, liver-spotted finger at Arthur, who was staring at the floor, his body trembling. I do, actually, Evelyn said coolly. Then you know he doesn't just steal diamonds. Beatrice spat. He steals lives. He's not an orderly. He is Dr. Arthur Sterling. He is the butcher who murdered my husband on an operating table. The confession, the real accusation, hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen from the room. This wasn't a joke. This was an execution. Arthur flinched, a low moan escaping his lips. He looked, for a second, like a man who had just been stabbed. He murdered my Charles. Beatrice continued, her voice breaking, the tears of a widow finally coming. And for 20 years, I have watched him. I recognized him the day he walked in here. I've watched him serve me tea. I've watched him mop my floors. And I've waited. And today, he finally made a mistake. He finally got greedy. Evelyn stared at her. The pieces were clicking into place, but they were all wrong. You recognized him. And you've just been waiting, Evelyn asked, a new, dawning horror in her voice. Waiting for what? For justice. Or, Evelyn said, her lawyer's mind racing. An opportunity to frame him. He's a murderer, Beatrice shrieked. He was found negligent, not guilty of murder, Evelyn countered. And I've read the trial transcripts, Beatrice. The case was thin. It all hinged on one man's testimony. Doctor, Croft is a saint. Is he? Evelyn's voice was sharp. And then, her gaze shifted. It moved from Beatrice, from Arthur, and landed in the corner. It landed on her mother. Margaret Reed was no longer just shaking. Her eyes were wide, her mouth open in a silent scream. She was clutching her chest, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She was reliving something. She was there. And Evelyn Reed understood. This wasn't just Beatrice's past. It wasn't just Arthur's past. It was her mother's, too. You knew this, didn't you? Arthur whispered, looking at Beatrice, his first words in the entire exchange. His voice was a rusty nail scrape. You knew who I was. You set this up. The brooch. Pour it. It's not a joke. It's revenge. It's justice, Beatrice cried. It's a lie, Evelyn said, her voice now filled with a cold, righteous fury. How would you know? Beatrice shot back. What do you know about that day? What do you know about my pain? Evelyn walked slowly, deliberately, until she was standing between Beatrice and her mother. I know, Evelyn said, her voice dangerously quiet. Because my mother. She knows. You see, Beatrice, you weren't the only one in that room who recognized Arthur Sterling. She turned. And her expression, for the first time, softened with a pain that mirrored Beatrice's. Weren't you, Mom? Margaret looked up, tears streaming down her face. I know, Evelyn announced to the silent room. Because my mother, Margaret Reed, was the head surgical nurse in that operating room 20 years ago. She was the one who was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement. She was the witness who was threatened into silence by the real butcher of Boston General. Evelyn turned and looked, not at Beatrice but at Arthur. Dr. Sterling, my mother. She's the one who saw it. She's the one who saw Marcus Croft's hand slip. The room imploded. Arthur looked up, his eyes wide, as if seeing a ghost. Nurse Reed, he whispered. Margaret. Margaret just nodded, sobbing. I'm sorry, Doctor. I'm so sorry. He threatened me. Beatrice DuPont looked confused. Croft? What does Croft have to do with this? He was the witness. He was the criminal, Evelyn snapped. And you, in your blind grief, have been hunting the wrong man for 2 decades. No, Beatrice looked desperate. It's a lie. Is it? Evelyn was now the prosecutor, the solarium, her courtroom. Let's test the theory. You say your brooch was stolen. A crime of opportunity. But you also say you've been waiting 20 years to destroy this man. That sounds like premeditation. Evelyn walked over to the tea table. You're a creature of habit, Beatrice. Always the same table. Always the same tea. Always the same silver-plated tea caddy. She picked up the ornate, heavy box. What? What are you doing? That's private. Beatrice stammered. It's evidence, Evelyn said. She opened the lid, and inside, nestled among the tea bags, was the DuPont brooch, its diamonds winking in the sunlight. My God. Henderson, the manager, breathed. She framed him. Beatrice collapsed into her chair, her face a mask of total, utter defeat. But before Arthur could react, before Evelyn could press her advantage, Henderson's cell phone, which he'd been clutching, rang. He looked at the caller ID, and his face went from pale to ghostly. Sir, he whispered into the phone. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. It's a very complicated situation. He hung up. He said, his voice trembling. You have made some very serious accusations against a very important man. Dr. Croft is a monster, Evelyn said. Dr. Croft, Henderson replied, is also the chairman of the board of Palisades Holdings. He's on his way. The temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees. Twist 3. The prison. Arthur suddenly understood. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't fate. His hiring here, years ago, through a third-party agency. The fact that he was paid, but kept in the most menial, humiliating position. The fact that Beatrice, his accuser, was a resident. It wasn't a job. It was a prison. It was a sentence. Croft hadn't just ruined him. He had kept him. He had placed him here, in this glass box, to be tormented by the widow of the man he was accused of killing. It was a psychological torture so precise, so cruel, it took Arthur's breath away. The doors to the solarium opened. Dr. Marcus Croft, 70 years old, was immaculate. His suit was Savile Row, his hair a perfect silver wave, his tan impossibly healthy. He radiated power, wealth, and a chilling, antiseptic cold. Mr. Henderson, he said, his voice a smooth, baritone hum. What is this? Circus. He surveyed the room. His eyes passed over Beatrice, over Evelyn, and landed on Arthur. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Arthur, he said, his voice full of false, paternal disappointment. You have been a model employee, a shining example of... Don't tell me you've been... stealing. After all I've done for you. The threat was unmistakable. I made you. I broke you. I own you. He didn't steal anything, Evelyn said, stepping directly into Croft's personal space. Ah, and you are. Evelyn Reed, attorney at law. I see. Croft's eyes went dead. A bottom feeder, then. This is a private matter. It stopped being private. Evelyn said, when you forced my mother, Margaret Reed, to perjure herself 20 years ago, it stopped being private when you framed Dr. Sterling for your own catastrophic incompetence. And it really stopped being private when your pet, Mrs. DuPont, tried to frame him for theft. Croft's mask didn't slip, but a dangerous light entered his eyes. He looked at Beatrice. You were told to watch him, not to engage. Beatrice looked up, horrified. You knew? You knew he was here? You let me hate him. Grief needs a vessel, my dear, Croft said, dismissing her. He turned his full, terrible attention to the corner of the room, to the frail, trembling old woman. Margaret, he said, like a scalpel. You look unwell. You know, these places. They are only for those of sound mind. A woman who makes fantasies about the past. She might be better suited for a state facility. A locked ward. It was the final threat, the one that had kept her silent for 2 decades. Evelyn moved to her mother's side. Mom, look at me. Don't look at him. Look at me. It's over. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Margaret Reed looked at the monster who had stolen her life. She looked at the doctor whose life had been stolen. And she looked at her daughter, who was offering her a way out. The 80-year-old woman, who hadn't stood straight in 20 years, pushed herself up from her chair. She whispered, her voice a tiny, rusty thing. What did you say? Croft asked. No, Margaret said, louder. I'm not afraid. I was there. I was there. She was talking to the room now. To history. I saw it. He. She pointed a shaking finger at Croft. He was arrogant. He was showing off. His hand. It slipped. Just a millimeter. But it tore the artery. And he looked at Dr. Sterling. And he said, fix it, genius. And Dr. Sterling tried. Oh God, he tried, but it was too late. And you blamed him. You told them all. You told them he did it. She was sobbing, but she was standing. I'm not afraid. Not anymore. It was done. The truth, 20 years late, had finally landed. Beatrice DuPont stared at Croft. Her grief now curdled into a new, pure, white-hot rage. You let me hate the wrong man. You killed my husband. Arthur Sterling simply closed his eyes. The tension, the weight, the 20-year cringe, finally left his body. He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since 1999. Tears streamed, silently, down his face. Dr. Marcus Croft, for the first time, looked small. He looked at Beatrice, at Arthur, at the victorious, cold-eyed lawyer. He saw his legacy, his board, his entire, carefully constructed world evaporate. Evelyn Reed snapped her briefcase shut. We will be filing a complaint to reopen the DuPont case with the medical board, Dr. Croft, and another with the Attorney General, regarding your threats against my mother, and, of course, a multi-million-dollar civil suit for all of this. You are, as they say, finished. Croft didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. There was nothing left to say. He just turned, a hollow, immaculate suit, and walked out of the solarium. The aftermath was exactly as Evelyn predicted, total. The Palisades scandal was front-page news. Dr. Marcus Croft was ruined, his name a permanent disgrace. Beatrice DuPont, in a final, stunning act of penance, used the last of her fortune to establish a fund in her husband's name. A fund dedicated to restoring justice for Dr. Arthur Sterling. Evelyn moved her mother out of Palisades and into a small, bright condo near her own home. With the secret gone, Margaret's anxiety faded. She began to paint. Her mind, for the first time in 2 decades, was clear. Evelyn visited Arthur one last time. He wasn't at the nursing home, which was under new management. He was in a simple apartment, surrounded by boxes. He wasn't wearing scrubs. He was wearing a simple, crisp shirt. He looked lighter. "So?" Evelyn asked, leaning against a box. "What now? Will you go back? To medicine?" Arthur looked at his hands, the steady, surgeon's hands. "No," he said, a small, sad smile touching his lips. I don't think I can. That man, that genius. He's gone. So what will you do?" He picked up a letter from the new Palisades board. "Beatrice. Well, the board. They've asked me to consult. To teach the new staff. To advocate for the residents. They want me to be their conscience. A new job." Evelyn smiled. Arthur Sterling, professional conscience. "It's a start," he said. He extended his hand. Not the hand of a pariah or a victim or a doctor. Just the hand of a man. "Thank you, Evelyn. For..." Evelyn shook it. "Thank my mother, Arthur. She's the one who remembered." He nodded. "For the first time in 20 years, he said, his voice clear. "I feel like I can, too."
If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to support the channel so we can create more videos. Thank you, everyone.